They did exactly what they needed to do to show that they're not someone to be played with. I mean, 42-13, really LSU kind of getting a score there late in the game to even make the score that. And when we talk about the game, like you mentioned earlier, is this the new standard for Alabama going forward? Because it's been a roller coaster. They start out the year, performed well. Then we had the Vanderbilt game, we had the Tennessee game. South Carolina didn't look super convincing. But if this is the Alabama team that goes forward, I think this is a playoff team that could take anybody, right? Like, I mean, the rain was a condition for sure, but it felt like an Alabama team from like those mid Nick Saban years, especially on defense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I've seen some of the comparisons from the safety play with Caleb Downs last year to the safety this year, and what he's been able to do turnovers wise. Offensively, I agree with you, right? This Alabama team with this running attack footprint. I mean, you saw Jalen Milroe almost 200 yards on the ground. There's not many teams in the top 12 defensively that can stop a team, any team, whether it's Bama or another team that can run that effectively. Like, I don't know if BYU has the ability to stop a team like that, or Boise State or Ohio State. And so this game has to give a lot of confidence to Alabama fans when it comes to what that rushing attack can do and overall how they look this game.
Yeah, I mean, and when we did the Missouri recap and breaking down that game, and we were coming into the bye week, and we're like, okay, what Alabama are we going to see here? We were saying, I think they're starting to figure out the identity for this team is we need to run the ball way more than we throw the ball. The rain kind of expedited that for sure because they ran about 73% of the plays in this game.
Yep.
48 rushing attempts for 311, 6 touchdowns. I mean, the ground attack was unstoppable. Now, going forward, it could be tough to do because, not a lot of teams in the top are going to be able to fully shut that down. Oklahoma right now, 16th in the country in rush yards per game for opponents. Auburn's right up there, just outside the top 25. So it's going to be tough to keep going, but you're building momentum. You have multiple running backs. It's a committee. I think that the air game would have been better supported on paper. Had it not been raining, a couple more passes connected. We saw the deep ball to Ryan Williams get dropped. That would have been a huge one to start out the game. So the identity, though, for this Alabama team is keep the ball on the ground, and I agree they're going to be hard to stop.
They're definitely going to be really hard to stop on the ground. And I was watching that play with Ryan Williams, and I was like, does he not wear gloves when he plays football?
Yeah.
But that drop was definitely tough. But, in this game, it made more sense to run the ball given the weather conditions. And, when I think about the story arc of Alabama season and is this the new standard, that new standard was kind of set in that Missouri game, not just on the offense, but on the defense, forcing 2 turnovers from Garrett Nussmeier this game. I think they forced a turnover last week 2 weeks ago against Missouri as well. The defense has looked improved. The offense is found its identity. And now I feel like as a Bama fan, you can sit back and say, okay, I know how we're going to plan on coming each week. Let's just do what we do well a lot, right?
Yeah.
We pass well, we run better. Let's run more and let the run establish the pass.
Yeah, and it wasn't perfect because there were multiple times where they were caught in 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 7, and they had to throw the ball to get that, and they did effectively in this game. We saw them not get the 4th down there as well. So it's a tough thing to do to just commit to running the ball because you're kind of fighting for every single yard you get.
Yep.
But I think it's the identity of the team. I think it's what they need to do going forward. I mean, defensively, they got 3 turnovers from Nussmeier on the day. We know that maybe is nothing special since he's one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah.
But it was through pressure, which was the interesting thing that I thought from Alabama. They brought 7 a couple of times. Even when they sent 4, they got to him and put some pressure there. And this is an LSU O-line that up to this point has been pretty good at keeping him clean. But the pressure is what they did to stop him. Knowing the O-lines that they're going to play in the future, they may not be as good as this LSU O-line. So being able to do that, being able to swarm, and not give up the big play, that was something we were concerned about when looking at the game.
Yeah, absolutely. We were texting back and forth during the game and talking about that defense. And like you had mentioned, one of the players was kind of giving it like a throwback to Reuben Foster back in the day, and just how they were commanding the line of scrimmage. And I remember the big sack that happened around the second quarter. The guy just went straight to the middle of the center, and just Nussmeier was just running for his life. And so, like you said, something that we hadn't seen this LSU offensive line allow. Which has allowed Nuss to be pretty successful when it comes to passing, turnovers aside, in the conference play. But you had talked about the defense kind of reminding you of the Reuben Foster LSU game, and just more so how that team was running defensively.
Yeah, and it's what going into the year, you thought Kane Womack was going to do. It's that swarm defense. Hey, keep everything in front of us and let's just attack the point of the ball. And they did that well. Like they brought guys, they tackled well. I know I keep bringing up the rain, but in the rain, that's tough to do. But they did it. And aside from a couple of decent break-off plays, they kept everything pretty, pretty in front of them. To start out the game, the kickoff return, and then the big run from Caden Durham. That 45-yarder was like, oh man, is this going to be the story of the game? But then after that, held them to like 7 for 15. Yep. So they shut down the big play. We talked about Nussmeier's ability to throw that deep ball. This was his worst game from an average depth of target, less than 6 yards per attempt on the depth of target, where usually he's 10, 11, 15, you're throwing over 15 yards per attempt against Ole Miss. So they forced him to not be able to throw the ball downfield, keeping everything in front of him, didn't have enough time to operate in the pocket. I do think that Nussmeier is a good quarterback, but I think that if Alabama has this pressure and forcing quarterbacks to throw the ball quickly to guys underneath, it's going to help Alabama when they go face teams in the playoff, like if they play Texas, like if they play at Ohio State.
Yep. And I think when I think about the new standard and the standard for Bama, I think it is always against the top teams. So when I think about the standard, I'm thinking about Ohio State. I'm thinking about Oregon. I'm thinking about Texas. You beat Georgia. Georgia's probably going to fall in the rankings. Thinking about Georgia still a little bit here too, right? And I'm thinking about Tennessee, and what this defense has shown me is a championship standard. What this offense has shown me, what they can do when they have a lead, they led the entire game. You can run the ball. We'll see what happens as they find themselves down in games. But right now, they've held nothing but a lead the last 2 football games they played with Missouri and LSU, and so a lot to be optimistic for. For Bama fans. And college football aficionados and psychos, what should they expect from Bama given what the football we've seen the last couple of weeks?
I think they should expect to see more of the same offensively. I think it'll be tougher to do that against some of the teams down the stretch here with Auburn and Oklahoma, and maybe not a 73 to 27% difference in running versus pass plays. But I think that they'll see something similar to this. I think the team is starting to fire. They're finding chemistry. It's tough to look at just one game and say it's broken everything from the past when we see them lose to Tennessee and Vanderbilt. But I do think they're heading in the right direction. So just being positive, because I think that the team is operating with a confidence and a consistency now over the last 2 games that can carry them into the playoffs.
Definitely. And, from Saban teams, we usually saw them playing their best football in November. And I feel like last season, that was kind of the same story. You had that loss against Texas and some games were close and dicey, but November was when they started to play their best football. And it seems that, that's the story this year. So a lot to look forward to. We'll take it. We'll see if this is the new standard, and, all things are good in Tuscaloosa. So